Welcome to Transformation at CIIS. Listen and be transformed. As co-leads of the BSU, it's Juneteenth. Juneteenth is coming up. It is upon us, and I wanted to just hear from you all. How you feel about Juneteenth? Why is Juneteenth important to you? So I'll just let each one of you go ahead, and then I'll jump in at the end.
So what does Juneteenth mean to me? What's interesting is I remember so first of all, I'm Jamaican American, and I was like, okay, when I realized that what it meant was, I think it was like in Galveston, Texas or something. I don't remember in this moment, but it had been a couple of years since the so-called Emancipation Proclamation, and I was like, wow, like that's some deep stuff, to know that folks were emancipated and then you continue to maintain them. It's actually a reason why I think literacy is so important. Real talk is because they try to hide stuff in books, try to hide stuff in writing, things like that's important. But what is going on now, it doesn't, this commodification that's going on. I do think it's a demonstration of Ubuntu. Black folks coming together and being in our empowerment of being able to celebrate who we are in the US and across the diaspora. It's an opportunity to celebrate our liberation. I actually think part of the reason why I wear this hat is that it's a real opportunity to remember, for me, to remember like my revolutionary spirit, my anti-racist spirit, my liberatory spirit, my emancipatory, is that a word? Yeah, emancipatory spirit, like this spirit that I have that I really see Black folks in the US and across that, right? So it's also an opportunity to remember, like when I told my little brother, to bring up those that come before us to make sure we spread knowledge and education. I don't know. I wasn't there. It's not like Black folks were like, oh, I'm gonna just make sure I go all over the country and make sure everyone's free, right? But in the realness of who we are in the world, some of us need to go out there and say you are free or you're not free to get free. But it's a reminder of the work is not done. And it wasn't 200 years ago. So there's also like this really like this feeling like, yo, that was like, 20s, great. That's not far. That's not far at all. So it also tells me how close we are to the deception, how close we are to like it's happening now in so many ways. And it's like, yeah, because this is not that long ago. Slavery, the enslavement of African peoples in the US was not that long ago. People try to act like it was so far away. And I'm like, nah, that's your great great grandparents. And some people have known their great great grandparents, right? I got cousins who knew their great grandmothers. So when you think like, yeah, so for me, it's all of that. It's also the final thing I'll say is that it is a reminder that the US, even when they say we are free, is very much when I say the US, the system that is the US, the institution that is the United Slavery of Africa, people of African descent, and that we get to do something about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Shameeka. I love that. And you were mentioning at the beginning that you're Jamaican American. Can you just say that again? I think you cut out when you were explaining that part.
Oh, okay. I'm a first generation American. Like literally, I was conceived in Jamaica and raised in America. So I'm a first generation American. So my experience is different. So in Jamaica, there's slavery and then there's colonialism, which just ended like 60 years ago, maybe.
Right.
Something years ago. So yeah. So that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Jenn, would you like to go next? What does Juneteenth mean to you?
I think I appreciate Shameeka. She brought a lot of stuff up that I think for me is there as well because I have mixed feelings about Juneteenth. Like, I was really excited or I was really grateful to know about Juneteenth early on. Like, I grew up in Berkeley, and in Berkeley they talked about Juneteenth, and I have family from Texas, and so they also knew about Juneteenth. But then I met all these people, all these Black people in my life that didn't know about it, had never heard of it. Similar, like they had never heard of like Greenwood, they'd never heard of the Tulsa Massacre, they'd never heard of all of these different things that have happened over time. And so I feel blessed that I have this knowledge and that I had it young and knew about it young. But at the same time, I think, as Shameeka was talking about, it represents our lack of understanding about our own diasporic experience. That it took so long. and that not only did it take so long for a law that wasn't actually ratified until 1865, in the January of 1865, it took another additional 5 months and soldiers to come into that Galveston space and to actually enforce it before that happened. And then still, we know that for, another 100+ years, you had sharecropping. I mean, there were literally people in the 1970s that had to be emancipated out of sharecropper spaces in Texas and in other areas of the South, who were still in those systems. And so I think when I think about it, I also think about how we just, got it as a federal holiday. Similarly, we have Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and the thing I like to remind people is when Martin Luther King Jr. died, he was the most hated man in America. Okay, like easy. And now some of the same people who are still in office are putting out, quotes, but they put out the quotes that fit their needs. Okay, they don't put out the quotes that talk about how we as a community, or we as a nation, need to be better supporting people, how we need to have universal income, what real equality looks like, but how we need to develop and work with people in poverty of all colors, things like that. And so I see it as something that I'm really glad that I knew about, and I'm really glad it's becoming part of a larger national conversation. And still it is whitewashed, and still it is being used as a tool to placate. And so I see it as a time to speak to power, and to also go out and to be grateful for the sacrifices that people have made, and to the hard work and the resilience of the African diasporic people in this country, and the immigrants that continue to come, like Shameeka's family, and build something here and create a new type of African American, and continue to bring in those traditions, continue to bring in that history, and to remind us that we are part of a much larger group, and that as Shameeka talked about, that spirit, permeates that whole group, and that resilience. And so for me, I also follow a group called Outdoor Afro, and one of their things is like, here are people who were literally out in the field spending all their time, that's what we're celebrating, is these people being told that your time outside is now your own. And so on Juneteenth, I'm going to spend time outside that is mine, and be in nature and be in spirit as an emancipated, independent, learned Black woman. So
Thank you,
that is what
Jenn.
Juneteenth means to me.
Thank you, Jenn. And like you said, when he was assassinated, he was reviled. And so, it is really one of those things, the misappropriation of our culture is real, and even this misappropriation of Juneteenth. So thank you, Jenn. Sabi, did you want to weigh in about what Juneteenth means to you?
Hi, and I don't have a lot to say, but I'll say that I'm African American in experience, and so Juneteenth has always been prominent in my family, but again, my family is from the South and Oklahoma, and so there was just a conscientiousness about it. But I will name that it was the later generations of my family that recognized the occasion, and just the historic implications of what the occasion was. So I'm always here just because I'm here for the blackness of it all. But now I live in Berkeley, and I have for the last 10 years, and there is the tradition of the Juneteenth parade and festival. And I used to live in West Oakland. There's the Black Cowboys that would come out also. So I think all of that is really relevant, just in terms of having an occasion, an opportunity to become familiar or refamiliarize ourselves with history. So those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you so much. It's interesting because coming from the Jamaican American experience, but my mom was married to an African American gentleman from the South. And so growing up with him, he would take us to the Juneteenth celebrations, and he's one of those people that really helped me understand even more the African American experience, the folks who were the descendants of the enslaved Africans in America. And Shameeka covered how, the fact that there was enslavement in the Caribbean, but it looked slightly different in that when enslavement ended, the colonial kind of legacy continued. And so there is some separation. And I really feel like we are together in our experience of what imperialism looks like and what brutality and oppression looks like. And so Juneteenth for me is significant in that it represents freedom, but it also represents the awareness of freedom. Because to Shameeka's point, I think Shameeka raises like, those folks were actually quote unquote free on the books before Juneteenth happened, but it was the awareness that shifted everything. And I think when I think about the awareness of freedom, that's kind of where my head is now in my life, is how can we as descendants of enslaved people, of colonized people, be aware of our freedom, be aware of our birthright, freedom as a birthright that no one gives to you and no one takes away, because we are, just by being here on this planet, deserving of total freedom. And that's what, like, I get up every morning thinking about. I think about my ancestors who were not, did not experience those liberties, and the ones who made a way for me to be here right now. And that's Juneteenth for me, is like the recognition of those folks and the recognition of the fight and the constant resistance, the constant struggle that then leads to the power reclamation moment that we get to have as descendants of those folks. So that's what Juneteenth means to me. And honestly, when I see what capitalism is doing, trying to monetize Juneteenth, trying to make Juneteenth something that they benefit from more than actually the descendants of the African folks, that it saddens me what capitalism does when it takes hold of things. And so I think Juneteenth also means for me staying true to its origins, staying true to what the folks really wanted, and that was the freedom as a birthright. So that's what it means to me, y'all. If there's anyone that wants to add anything else,
Join the Black Student Union. Join the Black Student Union.
Join the Black Student Union.
Join the Black Student
Join
Union.
the
Black is black.
BSU. Yes. I like that. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you for making the time to have this conversation. Listen and be transformed. Listen and be transformed.